I am Basha Olson. I live in the Castine area and I am a bronze sculptor.
So, Basha, I've been looking at your art. It's so beautiful and so evocative. And the word that really comes up in my mind when I see your pieces is movement.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much movement.
Mm-hmm.
Could you talk a little bit about movement as a theme in your work?
I like to experience when I'm making the sculpture to have it look alive because sculpture can somewhat be just a person standing there and it's beautiful still, but I like the thought of movement. Movement is a big part of my life and everything that I do. I never stop moving, I don't think. But for my art, I want to express through whatever little tiny form that their arm is in, or that the way that they're going backwards, and you can notice that backwards movement to make it feel alive, that they're doing something, that they were in the middle of something, and that they had an alive moment that I captured but stopped it still, but they're still about ready to do it. So I just like that feeling because I work with, I like to create a lot of animals, I like to create a lot of people moving, swimming, ocean, boats moving. So for me, it's something that makes it more alive.
The other element that's so present, whether it's visually present or not, is water. And clearly, we live in an area where water is formative and expressive and daily for almost all of us. What is it for you living that close to so much water and that type of movement?
It's my life. I'm a sailor and have been since my mother cleared me for sailing all by myself at 6 years old. I have experienced many joys out in the water, many fears. Every bit of emotion goes on the water for me, including what's underneath it, and swimming with the phosphorus. So it's so alive, and it's a world that is so pure, and it's something that is imaginative to me because I have to imagine what's down there and imagine the amount of things that could be right below me as I'm sailing. So for me, living around this water, it brings my soul alive. It has enhanced my life to have land and water. I didn't know how precious land was until I had both. I had water first, meaning owning myself. And so it has just taught me so much to appreciate. And around here, it is just precious how pure it still is.
You mentioned that your mother cleared you for sailing at 6, and clearly that was an important moment in your life.
Could you tell us the origin story of when you also knew you were an artist in the same way that you knew you were a water person?
I think when my sister and I used to make gifts, we wanted to always make gifts, and that was when we were little girls. And so it just was so fun to create with your hands and make something beautiful at the same time. So I think that was the first moment of knowing I want to create, and then really knowing I was an artist. Really didn't, a bronze artist. I had done paintings and drawings and little things that would be considered sculpture, but not really. But was when I felt that feeling in my hands, that it just was a meditative moment of creating something that just kept getting more and more beautiful and real in my hands as I made it. And then I said, I really need to do this. And that's the true artist, other than the child artist.
I wonder if you could give us a window into that. I'm always fascinated when artists talk about the moments of creation. And I wonder where creation begins for you. Does it begin when your hands touch? Does it begin in an intimation? Where does it begin? Do you even know?
Well, I do start, there's always a thought that starts. With animals, it's more something in my heart when I make an animal. It's something that has touched me. in a movie that I saw it in, or myself diving in the water and swimming with a whale or something like that. So there are things that are so informative to my soul as they occur, that they have to, I just want to express them, even though they may have happened 20 years ago. There's something that's inside of me, and that's when I start my creative thoughts as I'm doing them now. It goes back to those moments, and that was something that was precious to me, and so I want to create it. My kite people, who doesn't? I love flying kites. So how could I not? And it's movement. It's a flying kite. Those kind of the creative moments, I don't plan them, but they come. And then I say, oh, that would be great to do. And then I have to figure out how to do it.
Well, let's talk about that too,
Yeah.
because, we sometimes get caught in these visions of artists as people who are, in this deeply creative moment all the time. But I'm looking around your workshop,
Yeah.
and I'm seeing, the craft tools of what some might think of as, workmen,
Yeah.
right? And each of those words carries a different element for it in being here with two women talking about your work. What is the other part that goes into art making that people sometimes don't think about? Like the engineering, all of those things that have to come together.
So there's a lot of mathematics with bronze. I do a lot of the process. You can bring it to the foundry, and the foundry takes care of all those processes. I liked to have my hands in it to create it and to make the molds and detailing. So you have to really figure out from the beginning with bronze, because it has to go into all these molds and then come out of all these molds and then go into more molds and come out of molds. You have to calculate how the pieces are going to go together and how they will work together. So first it's the clay that I do. And as you make the clay, you can just create then, and you're just going for it. But in the back of your mind, you're always going, am I ever going to be able to get this out of the mold? And how am I going to do that? But I try not to think about that too much, because the creative first is creating it, and then you cut off arms and legs so that you can make the molds, and then you calculate all that out. So the skills, there's a lot of woodworking to build things around it. You have to build and create that. There's a lot of mold making and learning all the techniques of rubber forms that have to go around it. And so it was a lot of study work at first to figure out how to do it. I did go to the foundry in the beginning and just watched and learned from them. And then just kept doing it and learning how to maneuver everything and make it work so that they are a final piece that gets to go to the foundry.
And what about the craft that goes into it? Learning how to use machines, learning how to use tools, how to even clamp something down to hold it in place when you're working on it. Was that trial and error, or did you?
I already had a lot of those skills because I do a lot of woodworking. And I do a lot of I built my own house and the boats where you have to do a lot of work, and we always worked on our own boats, and we worked at boat yards when we lived on our boat. So I had those skills already. But there was a learning curve with all the rubber molds. I had never done that before, and that was the study to get it right, and luckily each one came off.
So let's go back to the word that I teased out earlier, workmen, because I'm thinking, I'm not a specialist in art history, but I know a little bit. And the only person I can think of is Camille Claudel as a sculptor. Mm-hmm. And do you think about where you fit into art history? And as a woman in particular, does that even figure into how you think about yourself as an artist?
No. I just do. I guess I've always been in a man's world, doing the woodworking and and the hard work on the boat was always kind of a man's thing. So I don't even think about it. It's a freedom, I guess, in some ways, just to be in and amongst it.
For sure.
Yeah.
Tell me about why you chose to live here. I know it sounds like your family has some history in Maine.
they live
Yeah.
here.
Yes. And why did you decide? I mean, you probably could live anywhere.
Mhm.
Why did you decide to live here?
Well, we had sailed up to Mount Desert Island for a job that we had during the winter in 1999. And so and we came north instead of going south, a little strange, but so while we were here during that time, there was a bit of a tragedy in a situation that kind of stopped my world, and so I decided that I needed to be grounded. And we were in MDI, and I wanted lots of land, and I couldn't afford lots of land on Mount Desert Island. And so we started searching and found this property, and I feel blessed and like some angels were watching over me or something, to be in this area, and everything it has offered. And of course, as we were searching, we needed someplace close to the water because of the boat. So it was to get grounded, and I found a very good place to get grounded.
And we talked a little bit about the formative element of making art as a young girl and being on the water as a young girl. Fast forwarding, are there other people, experiences, whatever, that have been deeply influential to you as an artist, a mentor, or someone whose work has influenced you?
George Modica, he at the marina that I was at, Seal Edge Marina, when we arrived and saw his dolphins, they were extraordinary to see and touch. And I'd never really thought about bronze as my medium. And when I saw that, it just so inspired me. And then I met George, and was just a blast. And so I would watch him work, and he lived right down the road, and I would walk down with my dog, and we would sit and chat and talk, and I'd learned from him a great deal. He was sculpting, doing a clay sculpture in clay at that time. And it was just fascinating to see the tools that he was using, which was great to learn how he did everything. And then he sent me to the foundry to experience that, and his foundry that I went to. And then he had me make a sculpture, and it was the greatest thing to do. He just slammed down the clay and said, make something.